Yo, what's good, Shinobi Nation? Welcome back to Just a Shinobi, the home of the craziest Naruto what ifs. Today we're jumping into part 3 of What If Yajuu Sanin trained neglected Naruto? So strap in, because things are about to get explosive. If you're new to the channel, make sure to smash that subscribe button, hit the bell so you don't miss the next chapter, and share this video with your whole ninja squad. And of course, drop your theories in the comments. Your support is what keeps this shinobi grinding. Chapter 9: A Change of Pace. 1 month later. Sasuke was irritated. Granted, this wasn't an unusual thing for him, but today it was at a boiling point. He had hoped that after leaving the academy his training would finally start getting serious. Instead, he felt like he was stuck in place, doing nothing to affect his growth. For the past month, all his sensei had taught them was team-building exercises. He didn't need or want the man's sentimental lessons. This plus the fact that they were stuck doing chores every day was driving him mad. He refused to call them missions. No matter how much Kakashi explained how the D ranks were essential for the village and a rite of passage for genin, it was still a waste of their time. What bothered him even more was the feeling that he was no longer miles ahead of his teammates. He shot the two a glance. The three of them had settled into this morning routine as they waited for their sensei to eventually show up. Hinata was off to the side warming up with her juken katas, while blonde loudmouth sat across from him with his nose stuck behind another one of his books. Even though he held no interest in studying Fuinjutsu, Sasuke couldn't help but feel frustration creep through his body over the boy's proficiency in the art, especially after the blonde's latest news. After years of effort, Naruto had finally arrived at the final book of the intermediate series. During their missions, he wouldn't stop talking about how excited he was for some sort of test. Apparently, if he passed it, he could finally move on to the advanced series. Although he could have been more humble about it, Sasuke had indeed earned the right to consider himself the strongest of his age group. That being said, even he wouldn't claim to be any kind of expert in the fields he specialized in. His levels in taijutsu and ninjutsu were certainly above most chunin, but still nowhere close to earning a title of mastery. It was humbling and vexing to admit that he wasn't the only prodigy on the team. The boy may have been socially inept and struggled with the simplest of subjects, but somehow he was at a level of skill that already surpassed the majority of Fuinjutsu users in Konoha. Not that there were many Fuinjutsu users in Konoha, mind you. For how important the art seemed to be, he was surprised when he had found out that they were extremely uncommon. When trying to consider why, he recalled what his mother had once told him about a failed sealing core project. It had been a project created by the Yondaime as an attempt to revitalize the dying art back to Konoha. In fact, a close friend of Sasuke's mother had apparently been some sort of teacher for this project. However, the project fell apart after the Kyuubi attack and the Yondaime's death. Without teachers, the students apparently struggled to progress any further after they approached the more complicated course load. Yet, here sat the class clown advancing further than grown adults had managed even with help from a Hokage. Sasuke tried to shove the accomplishments of the irritating blonde out of his mind as his gaze fell upon his other teammate. Even she was progressing, although not exactly in her skills as a ninja. She had finally become more comfortable around the two boys and her stutter had all but disappeared. Of course, she still blushed up a storm whenever Naruto complimented her or got too close. Today, as he watched her go through her sets, he started to notice something was wrong. It was like her body was on autopilot as it moved from set to set. It just seemed too stiff. As he gazed at her face, he could tell that something was bothering her. Hinata's mind was indeed occupied. Her thoughts lingered on the conversation she had before she arrived at the training grounds. Earlier that morning, Hinata had made it abundantly clear she held no fondness for the bottom floor of the clan library. In fact, the only positive memory she could associate with the place was of the jutsu scroll her mother had left her. She hated the dark, cold feeling the room gave off, which seemed to mirror the main family that were its only visitors. That being said, she couldn't deny that the room was an incredible source of information. It was just that none of it was helping her right now. The previously dark room was now brightly lit as new lanterns had been placed along the walls. Hinata sat at a desk in the corner of the room consumed by a sea of scrolls. Ever since that day when the scroll finally decided to reveal its contents, she had immersed herself in research. She had realized that this was something that was never going to go away until she dealt with it. So, she decided to take the initiative. Her father had given her full access to the clan's records, and she was making the most of it. She usually never worked on her project in the mornings. Normally, she reserved time for the scroll only after her daily missions and her own private training. Today, she had decided to come down to the floor because she believed she might have stumbled upon a breakthrough the night before. However, just as the others before it, her lead turned out to be another dead end. While her lead had initially held promise, records from multiple sources just didn't line up with the story in the scroll. She rubbed her eyes and looked at her clock. She decided she could read through it one more time before she had to meet up with her teammates. She picked up the scroll and began reading the fable she almost had memorized by this point. The Tale of the Rabbit Goddess, Part 1. It is believed that power corrupts, but absolute power corrupts absolutely. This is the tale of the Rabbit Goddess. How she came to be, came to love, came to fear, and came to hate. For love breeds sacrifice, which in turn breeds hatred. When we lose someone or something precious to us, hate is born. Vengeance is the product of that hate, and so death and pain follow. For millennia, pain spread across the world of man, bringing with it the ultimate byproduct of human nature, war. Wars for greed. Wars for love. Wars amongst enemies. Wars amongst friends. Wars amongst rivals. Wars amongst brothers. It was a never-ending cycle that consumed the human consciousness. Then one day, a being clad in blinding light descended from the sky. Her skin was as white as ivory. Her eyes were as pale as the moon. This celestial maiden was revered and taken into the world of man. She was taken in and served the lord of the land she arrived in. This lord and the maiden made a connection during her service. However, this was not love. Love was a foreign concept to her. She had only one desire in this world. Her wish was for a world of peace devoid of fighting. Over time, rival nations grew jealous of the Lord and his mysterious mistress, and decided to lay claim to the land. However, a great spirit inhabited this land. In the center of the mountain stood the divine tree, whose branches towered above all. From this tree, a single fruit was born. This fruit was said to contain great power, but the tree spirit would defend its power from any intruders. To end the fighting in her name, the maiden stormed the stronghold of the spirit and took the power of the fruit for her own. From the moment the fruit entered her mouth, their destinies were entwined. From that point forward, one could not exist without the other. Their energies merged, and with her newfound power, she laid waste to the armies of man. Thus began the reign of the Byakugan Queen, who was praised for her power and became a goddess to the people of the world. To maintain this power, she cut all her ties to the lands she had previously known. This included her ties to the Lord with whom she had connected. Over time, the fruits of their connection emerged and the rabbit goddess gave birth to 2 sons. These sons were also blessed with the power of the tree, and she finally learned to love. However, the seeds of mistrust had already been planted. The story abruptly cut off at this point, and it irritated her to no end. Hinata was someone who could not stand to leave a book unfinished. She felt that she had only been given a glimpse into this story, and she wanted to know more. Who was this woman? How did she fall from grace? Hinata had never heard of such a title of a Byakugan queen. She had combed through the piles of scrolls of the clan's history looking for any hint towards the story. This morning, she had been following a lead of a Hyuga matriarch who had used a similar moniker. However, her origins were well documented and did not align with the story. Hinata didn't know what to make of this whole thing. This absurd situation of ghosts, goddesses, and divine figures made her feel uncomfortable. While she wanted to dismiss the story as a fairy tale, she had the sinking suspicion that it was more than a precautionary tale. She had tried her best to figure out a connection between the characters in the story with the Hyuga ring, but she couldn't solve a puzzle if she didn't have all of the pieces. It was just all too much for a 12-year-old genin, who also had to focus on maintaining her training and completing missions. If she was ever going to solve this puzzle, she needed help. Same time. This train of thought was shared with her father, as he sat face to face with Shikaka Nara. The head of intelligence could not help but be surprised by the requested meeting. It wasn't every day that a Hyuga hierarch admitted that they needed help. While the prospect was certain to be troublesome, it had definitely proved interesting. "I'm sure your counsel would object to me aiding you in this," he muttered as he cast a lazy eye over the symbols and hieroglyphs. "That's why I have neglected to inform them of our meeting. I can no longer pretend to act as if the Hyuga can solve this on our own. Generations have tried and gotten nowhere. The council has deadlocked. They seek progression, yet are unable to accept change." Shikaka nodded as he scrolled through the pages of the journals, his eyes absorbing the information off of the page. "I'll certainly take a crack at it. I have a cousin who works in the cryptology department. He's extremely passionate about this sort of thing. To be honest, if it weren't for pressure from his father, he'd probably be an archaeologist. Is it all right if I bring him in on this?" "If you believe that he will provide substantial help towards your progress, then by all means." After a few moments of silence, Shikaka looked Hayashi in the eyes. "How is Hinata-sama responding to all of this?" Hayashi closed his eyes. "Originally, not well. An incident like that would be traumatic for any child. It took a lot of coercion to get her to return to the bottom floor. However, she has lately been going down there more and more." "Do you think she has made a breakthrough?" "I don't know. Honestly." Hayashi paused as he activated his Byakugan. The sight of the veins made Shikaku tense, as the Hyuga patriarch made sure that they were alone. "This is strictly to be kept between you and me. Do you understand?" Shikaku frowned but nodded. "I've begun to notice something rather odd." This was the head of the Hyuga clan. A clan renowned for its elegance, precision, and intellect. Odd was a very interesting choice of words. "Odd how?" he asked as he narrowed his eyes. "There have been moments when I have noticed large segments of time missing in my memory after talking with Hinata. To be honest, I didn't even realize it until one of my maids told me that I had been sitting in my office for 2 hours after a talk with her. It happens whenever she approaches me about something specific, but I can never seem to be able to remember what we discussed. Even when I have approached her about the topic, the same thing seems to happen." Shikaku's mind was racing. This was very concerning to hear from the head of one of Konoha's most prevalent clans. He was very careful with his next choice of words. "No offense, Hayashi-sama, but are you certain that your daughter isn't placing you in a genjutsu?" "Absolutely. She may have the chakra control for a decent genjutsu user, but she has never been taught any outside of the ones taught at the academy. In any case, I made certain to activate my Byakugan active on one occasion before speaking with her, and it was still active after I finished. Besides, she isn't the type to keep big secrets. She is far too kind for her own good." Shikaka closed his eyes as his mind began to run through possibilities. "She may not be the cause, but she is definitely the link." He rolled around an idea in his head. "She may not be the one directly doing it," he said slowly. Seeing the frown on Hayashi's face, he continued. "From what you've told me about this monument of yours, this goes beyond the normal clan secrecy bull. Whatever Hinata-sama has gotten herself involved in, its discovery is certain to have a permanent effect on how the clan is seen and structured. This puts her in a position of extreme leverage. Someone may be trying to utilize this. Hinata-sama claimed to see a figure during her event in the library. While there obviously wasn't a ghost, there is a serious possibility there was another person in the room with her." Hayashi's eyes narrowed. "Are you suggesting that this individual is the cause for my gaps in memory?" "What I'm suggesting is that there is a possibility of another party involved in this. For now, keep your eyes open for any shady activity within the clan. Especially keep a close eye on the council. They would be the only ones with clearance to that level." He began packing the supplies Hayashi had given him into a storage seal and shook Hayashi's hand. "Thank you for looking into this for me. I am very grateful." "Don't mention it. Besides, I still owe your wife for a mission during the war. Before I go, I'd suggest having another talk with Hinata. If she really has made a breakthrough, she will need as much help as she can get. Try writing a letter to her beforehand in case you find yourself subjected to whatever is going on." With that, Shikaka left Hayashi's office. As he headed for the front gate, he was surprised to run into the very topic of his last conversation. "Well, good morning, Hinata-sama," he said as he gave the girl a small bow. "Oh, Nara-sama," she said as she deeply bowed to the Jounin commander, "I had no idea you were here." He chuckled as he stared at the girl. I had to attend to some business with your father regarding a personal project. I take it you are heading out to meet your team? Yes, sir. Well then, the Nara estate is in the same direction as the training grounds. Would you mind if I accompanied you? No, sir. Not at all, she replied with a smile. With that, the two headed out of the gates and began walking towards the west side of the village. How is Shikamaru? Is he adjusting to his new team? The girl inquired. Shikaka sighed as he ran a hand over his hair. The boy is even lazier than I had been at his age, but I can already tell he is going to be twice as sharp as I am. Concerning his teammates, he has been close with Shuji and Ino for years. At this point, it's like throwing 3 siblings together on a team. Hinata giggled as she pictured Ino standing over the 2 boys. She could clearly see her barking orders as the 2 boys groaned and complained. Speaking of teams, I'm very curious about yours, Shikaka said as he glanced down at the girl. Really? Why is that? She asked. Your team is a special one. I don't know if you have any knowledge about the history of Team 7, but it's worth looking into. Every member who has been placed on that team has gone on to leave a permanent mark on the history of our village. This surprised Hinata. She had never thought about the previous incarnations of her team. Could you name someone I would be familiar with? So you haven't told her yet, Hayashi, Shikaka thought. Shaking his head, he continued, well, this was about 3 iterations back, but the Team 7 of old used to be led by Sandaime when he taught the legendary Sanin. Hinata's white eyes were wide in shock. The Hokage had seemed to place her on a team whose legacy included the likes of the Sanin. He saw that kind of potential in her? And what did that say about her sensei? She had known he was skilled, but to that extent? I hear the team is now made up of yourself, the last Uchiha, and that troublesome brat who painted our clan deer's horns bright orange, Shikaka said with a clear look of irritation. Hinata had to bite her tongue to contain a giggle. She had completely forgotten about that incident. Shikamaru had been angry with Naruto for a week after that, mostly because he had been the one forced to help clean it up. Well, Uchiha-sen is very reserved and doesn't like to talk to the rest of us very often. He is incredibly talented and certainly lives up the reputation of his clan. His taijutsu is precise, and he is very skilled in ninjutsu. However, he seems to carry a heavy burden upon his shoulders. I don't know what is causing him that pain, but we are hoping he will open up to us soon. Shikaka nodded, storing that for later. And what about the Uzumaki? As much as that incident bugged me, I can respect the brat for actually managing to sneak onto our property without being found. From what I hear, he's quite the Fuinjutsu expert. Hinata nodded and beamed. Yes, sir. Naruto-kun has proven to be very adept at the art ceiling. While his taijutsu certainly needs a little work, I'm certain he'll be able to fix it. His speed is incredible. I have never seen anyone our age move so fast. Shikaka looked down at her with one eye. Is he using any sort of weight training? It's old-fashioned, but I've seen the results they can accomplish, he said as a vision of green spandex burst into his mind. No, sir. I don't believe so. He might be receiving help from someone, but he hasn't told us yet. Although I don't know when he'd have the time. If he is not spending time on missions, he is always off in the woods reading and experimenting with new seals. Shikaka opened an eye and gazed down at her. Now how would you know what he is doing in his private time? She tried to prevent the crimson hue from spreading across her face. Was she really that easy to read? And in front of a clan leader no less. She knew this was Shikamaru's father, but still. Shikaka chuckled as the two continued their walk in awkward silence. Well, awkward for the embarrassed girl anyway. As they neared the west gates, it was time for them to part ways. I hope you and your team have a productive day, Hinata-sama. Thank you, Nara-sama. And I wish you success on whatever project you and my father are working on, Hinata replied with a bow. As she turned to leave, she stopped as older man called out, Hinata-sama, a moment. She turned around to stare at the Nara hierarch. Gone was the jovial expression he had worn on their walk over. He was staring at her with a serious expression that she had only seen copied on Shikamaru's face once or twice. It is never a bad idea to look for help from others, especially when you are in over your head. Keeping secrets will only add to your stress and make things more difficult for you. If you have a problem stopping you from telling someone, take a step back and find a way around it. With that, he turned and left the white-eyed girl shocked and speechless as she stood under the arch of the gate. He knew. Present. To say she was shocked would be an understatement. There was only one way he could possibly know about her issue. It surprised her that her father was so dedicated to this problem that he would reveal such important secrets of the clan to an outsider. Could the monument be the project that Narasama had been referring to? In any case, he was right. Being unable to share any information about the scroll was starting to take a toll on her. She almost completely avoided contact with her father in case he thought she was going crazy. It was also time to start reaching out to others for help. She would renew her efforts to reach out to her father. Maybe it was time to try a simple solution. If something was preventing him from seeing the story and scroll, then maybe he would see it on a different one. She made one final strike before raising her hands over her head and brought them down in the ending position. Thank you, Narasama. She turned around to see Sasuke staring intently at her face. He turned away quickly after they made eye contact. She was about to speak, when a cloud of smoke erupted on the bridge, revealing the form of Kakashi. "You're late, Baka-sensei," Naruto shouted. Kakashi bopped him on the head. "Mind your manners, Naruto. Good news, team. There will be no training today. We have received a special mission from the Hokage just for us. It will be a nice change of pace to get out of the village for a while." All of his genin perked up with this and stared at him with wide eyes. "Yada!" the blonde yelled as he bounced up and down. He grabbed Hinata's hands and started spinning in a circle. "We got a C rank! We got a C rank!" the blonde chanted as Hinata fought tooth and nail to stay conscious. "I'm sorry to say it, Naruto, but it is not a C rank mission," Kakashi chuckled as he watched the pair's antics. Naruto instantly deflated and face planted on the ground. Sasuke didn't seem too pleased either. Hinata wobbled in place as she tried to regain her bearings. "The mission is still a D rank," Kakashi said, which caused the two boys to groan. "It's for a lumber business less than a day's travel away from the village." "But we're going out of the village. Doesn't that mean it's a C rank? What if we get jumped by bandits?" While most missions outside of the village are generally C rank or above, that is not the case due to how close the outpost is from the village. Regarding any bandits, no bandit in their right mind would try anything so close to the village. We have scouting teams sweeping the area constantly, so no groups of bandits could ever set up camp along the path. "Sorry to disappoint you, Naruto," Kakashi said with an eye smile. Naruto pouted and grumbled as Hinata reached out and patted his shoulder. Sasuke pushed off the bridge and faced Kakashi. "So why is this mission so special?" Kakashi turned to him and pulled out the mission scroll. "The Hokage personally asked us to take care of this job for one certain reason." "Him," he said as he pointed the scroll at the blonde. "Me?" Naruto exclaimed in shock. "Him," Sasuke echoed his surprise. Indeed. A fire broke out in the workers' quarters 2 nights ago. While many of the workers were injured in the fire, thankfully no one was killed. The owner of the lumberyard has a very important order for a wealthy client in the village, and sadly, the client isn't a very patient person, so the order needs to be shipped out right away. He has asked us to help him with loading the lumber into the wagons and escorting it back to the village. He and the Hokage are old friends, so when he reached out, the old man gladly offered him a cheap D-rank mission with the perfect man for the job. "What makes me so perfect?" Naruto asked as he wrinkled up his face. "Simple. Your shadow clones and gravity seals. With your help, loading the carts will be much faster as you can replace the workers who were injured and reduce the weight of the wood for everyone." Naruto stared at Kakashi before saying, "Hell, I can do you one better than that, Kakashi-sensei." Why don't I just seal the lumber away in a storage seal? That way it is easier to transport, and it would reduce the amount of time necessary for loading and travel." Kakashi rubbed his chin as he considered the idea. "That's not entirely out of the question. We would have to run it by the owner before we tried it." He turned his attention back to his other students. "Alright team, since time is of the essence, we are moving out today. It is going to be about an 8-hour hike from here to the town, so we should arrive around 7 p.m. if we leave on time. pack for an overnight mission and we'll meet at the front gates in 2 hours. Don't be late." With that, he disappeared in a swirl of leaves. Naruto looked excited. He rarely got to go outside of the village, and any chance to show off his few ninjutsu skills was all right with him. He stormed off towards his apartment shouting his goodbyes to his teammates as he ran off. This left the two clan heirs alone as they took a more leisurely pace back towards the village. "Are you excited for the mission, Sasuke-kun?" Hinata asked, trying to make small talk. I'm not too thrilled by it, but it will at least be a nice change of pace," and that was all the boy said on the matter. They continued walking in silence for several minutes, until Sasuke surprised Hinata by asking, "Are you also irritated by Kakashi's lax teaching method?" She rolled the question around in her head and chose her words carefully when she replied. "While I can agree with Kakashi-sensei's attitude towards the importance of teamwork, I can admit that I would also like something a little more challenging. While I am sure he is taking things at his own rate, it can be frustrating at times." Her answer seemed to satisfy him. "Good. When we come back from this mission, I want you and Naruto to back me up when I confront him." "What do you mean?" "I'm tired of not learning anything new. I want to learn some actually skills that don't revolve around teamwork. Working together is fine, but we aren't always going to be facing enemies together. When we get back, I am going to make him change up our training schedule." Hinata paused before she asked, "And what if he says no?" Sasuke frowned as the gates came into view. "Then I'll just have to find someone else who is willing to teach me. You have your family to help you and the Dobe has his stupid books. I am not going to waste my time anymore." The resentment in his voice startled the Hyuga heiress. "I don't believe it will come to that. I think Kakashi-sensei will listen to us if we present our case to him. Besides, we are a team. Whatever we do from now on, we do together." Sasuke sent her a look that she didn't quite recognize before he curtly said goodbye and headed off towards the Uchiha district. As she headed back towards the Hyuga compound, her thoughts drifted back to the scroll that plagued her free time and a headache started to form. A mission out of the village would certainly do good for everyone. Chapter 10: A Dying Breed. Hinata was always one to arrive early. She had her own policy, always leave 30 minutes before a scheduled time. Maybe she'd get there a little early, but it was always better to be early than late. So she was more than surprised when she found Kakashi waiting for her at the entrance of the village. "You're here early," she said as she walked up to the man. "You make it sound like this is an uncommon thing," Kakashi said with an eye smile. Hinata only shot him a raised eyebrow and he chuckled. Now. We are on the clock. I'm never late when we are on a mission. How punctual I am when we're off the clock is my business." "I don't think Sasuke-kun and Naruto-kun would like it if they heard you say that, Kakashi-sensei," she reprimanded. "Probably not. Which is why it's just going to be our little secret, Hinata-chan," he said as he ruffled her navy hair affectionately. She tried to look a little agitated by the gesture, but couldn't muster up the anger to do it. The result ended up looking like something an amused pout. They stood there and conversed for 10 minutes before Sasuke arrived. He had the same surprised look as Hinata upon seeing Kakashi. Instead of commenting on it, he walked up to the wall of the village and rested in the shade. Of course, it was 2 minutes before the scheduled time before Naruto burst onto the scene. "I'm not late, am I?" he panted as he tried to regain his breath. "Nope, just in time," Kakashi drawled. "I assume you left your bag on purpose?" The boy nodded as he reached into his kunai pouch and pulled out a little scroll. "All sealed up and ready to go, sensei," he said with a smile. Kakashi nodded and turned to address the group. "Okay, team. Like I said before, this should take us about 8 hours to get there. While this mission isn't exactly going to be life-threatening, still act as if we were in a real scenario. Consider it training for the real thing." All three lined up and Naruto gave the man a mock salute. "What are your orders, sensei?" Kakashi sighed and continued, "Sasuke and Hinata. When we arrive, I want you to drop off your stuff in your accommodations and begin patrolling the area. While there is little threat from enemy Nin, there is a chance of one of the men getting a little greedy in the wake of the confusion. Just keep an eye on things, while the manager and I discuss some details for tomorrow." "What about me, sensei?" Naruto butted in. I was getting to that. You are going to join me for your proposal to the manager. I think it would be best if there was a practical demonstration to ease the man into the idea. Naruto's eyes lit up. He loved getting to show off his fuinjutsu prowess, even if it was something simple. It was almost too quick to see, but Kakashi noticed Sasuke shooting the boy a short glare. Oh, was the little Uchiha prodigy getting a little jealous? Now wasn't that entertaining? Kakashi smiled as an idea popped into his head. Well, if we are going to treat this like a real mission, why start when we get there? This drew confused looks from his genin. Oh, they were just so precious and innocent. Let's have a little fun and treat this like an escort mission. Huh? Naruto intelligibly said, I don't get it. Who's the escort? You. Kakashi grinned. As the boy sputtered, a tiny grin broke out on Sasuke's face. What's wrong, Dobe? It makes perfect sense. We have to protect the most fragile of the group. What did you say, bastard? Naruto yelled. Hinata held an arm in front of him and tried to hold him back from lunging at the black-haired boy. Naruto, although Sasuke was a little rude when he said it, it does make sense. Hinata-chan. You too? He sulked off on the ground as dark lines appeared above his head. You think I'm fragile? Her eyes widened and she quickly shook her head. And no, Naruto-kun. You misunderstood. I meant that you are key for making this mission a success, so it makes sense that you are the valued person. Kakashi chuckled as he watched the exchange. Alright. If you're done pouting, Naruto, then let's move out. Sasuke, you take point, while Hinata and I will be alongside Naruto. The mission was so far a success. The trio of figures watched as their escort interacted with the manager of the lumberyard. His blonde hair gleamed as he amiably chatted with the manager about how they could reduce the amount of time necessary for transport due to their tragic accident. He only glanced in their direction once, and the dim gleam of their forehead protectors in the evening light reassured him that they were still there. As time went on, he noticed one figure detach itself from the rest of the group and head off deeper into the woods. Probably to go on patrol. Things were certainly going to start heating up soon if what the manager had said was true, but this was what he prepared for. It would be unprofessional for him to lose his composure at the first sign of trouble. After all, you don't spend 2 years of your life preparing to infiltrate Konoha only to lose your cool at the first sign of trouble. The IWA Jounin wanted to sigh due to his comrade's vexing behavior. The man was a ninja, for crying out loud. He was way too fidgety than the Jounin felt comfortable with, especially this close to Konoha. The Jounin could barely understand the Tsuchikage's reasoning for including him on this mission. The Chunin was rash, impatient, and thought with his heart rather than his head. He was too much of a loose cannon for this delicate operation. The Jounin preferred the Chunin's other teammate for this mission, at least he could act professional. That was why he had sent the man off to prepare for the incoming team from Konoha. Damn that cursed drunkard who had caused the fire in the barracks. Because of him, their operation, which had taken months of paperwork and preparation, was at risk. Their mole was posing as a carpenter under contract for the labor yard. It had taken months to forge the appropriate paperwork for him to get into Konoha, but now it could possibly be undone just because of an uncontrollable accident. Murphy's Law really was a bitch. Now, Konoha was sending out a team to help the manager, and that complicated things. The Jounin's team was sent to ensure that the spy slipped by the Fire Nation borders undisturbed, and provide cover for an escape route in the event something went wrong before he got inside the village. Their close proximity to the spy could alert the group from Konoha that something was wrong, causing them to investigate further. He was broken out of his thoughts as the other Chunin returned. Daiki-san, the team from Konoha is almost here. The Jounin frowned. Did they catch even a glimpse of you? Q shook his head. No, I'm certain, but you don't have to worry too much. Like we hoped, it's just a team of genin. Daiki felt the weight lift off his chest. Perfect. Now the only thing they had to worry about was the genin team's Jounin. Depending on his or her ability, they may not have to alter their plans. Perfect. I can't wait to see the trash Konoha sent. This'll be a breeze. The other Chunin confidently smirked. Daiki frowned. Takara, go check on the traps set along our escape route. What? But why? I want to see the Konoha scum up close, he argued. The Jounin fixed him a dark stare. Because I ordered you to. Now move it. The Chunin grumbled as he darted off. Q offered the Jounin an apologetic smile. I apologize for my friend's rude behavior, Daiki-san. The Jounin rubbed his forehead. He sounds too much like that upstart Yuta. How the hell did that insubordinate hothead become a Chunin? Takara is one of my best friends, but I will be one of the first to say that he wasn't quite ready to be promoted to Chunin. Yuta-sama and other members of the council put pressure on the Tsuchikage in order to speed him along. They needed him to pass the requirement in order to activate certain clan restoration laws. Even if he is mentally not ready for the rank, he makes up for it in his ability. Did the Tsuchikage tell you why he was chosen for this mission? Something about covering us if we need to escape, but I don't see what the hell could be so special about that hothead. He's one of the last of his family line. His family had a special Kekai Genkai, which made their clan especially hard to kill, but almost all of them died during the last Shinobi War. He's a little overzealous when it comes to Konoha, since one team discovered a weakness in their jutsu and exploited it. After spreading the information across their ranks, the clan's numbers greatly diminished. The Tsuchikage sent me to keep him in check because I'm the only one he'll calm down enough to listen to. Daiki was not one to argue against the decisions of his Kage. If the man thought Kyu could handle the Chunin on this important mission, then he would let him. Still, his attitude towards Konoha reflects more of Yuta's mindset than I would like. His hate-filled speeches and propaganda are doing more bad for the village's moral than good. Kyu nodded. I agree. Did you hear that he wanted the Tsuchikage to pardon the traitor Deidara as well? Daiki rounded on him. That's absurd. After all of the damage he left in his wake out of the village? Kyu looked grim. He believed he phrased it as being able to forgive the rebellious stage of a young artist. Honestly, I think he just wants to gather up as many people he can who would side with him over the Tsuchikage. Daiki shot him a look. Do you think he would try anything? He shook his head. Not anytime soon. He does not have enough followers for that, but I won't deny that I think that may be his ultimate intention. That is part of the reason why the Tsuchikage has assigned me to watch over Takara. He wants me to try to shake those feelings of hate out of his system and ensure his loyalty. He paused and turned his attention towards the road. I apologize, Daiki-san. I believe we are going to have to cut this conversation short. The team should be arriving in a few minutes. They waited in silence for several minutes before the silhouettes of Konoha's team became visible in the dark. Kyu did not get a chance to look at the group up close before, so now he really began studying the group. He did not recognize the Jounin, so he turned his attention to the Genin. The first to become visible had a mob of blonde hair and a booming voice. There was something familiar about the boy, but he couldn't place it, so he turned his attention to the other two. The blonde was chatting along with a young girl with dark hair, who he was surprised to recognize as a Hyuga. Not just any Hyuga, but a main family member. He was even more surprised when the boy in front passed, and he recognized the iconic fan shape on his back. An uchiha. The last loyal uchiha to Konoha. A different train of thought went through the Jounin's mind as he instantly recognized the Jounin from the bingo book. That was Kakashi Hatake of the Sharingan. Of course they couldn't have been blessed with a lower-level Jounin. Instead, they were faced with arguably the strongest Jounin Konoha had. Thankfully, the man's attention was held by a small book and his students were too distracted conversing amongst themselves to notice the duo watching them. They would have remained undiscovered if their other teammate had not chosen this exact moment to loudly return. Immediately, the Jounin tackled Takara and held him behind a tree. The Chunin struggled furiously as the Jounin tried to keep him quiet. All he could do was pray as he tried to silence the impatient Chunin within his grasp. After several minutes, Kyu appeared by their side. It is clear. They have passed. Daiki finally released Takara, who began gasping for air. What the hell was that for? Shut up, you idiot! You almost got us caught. He turned his attention back to Kyu. Did they notice us after I dived for Takara? The Genin did not notice, but the Jounin did glance in our direction. He seemed to stare right at where you were hiding. If he noticed, he didn't act on it. Shit, he said, as he ran a hand through his hair. Hatake would be suspicious now. He would now be keeping an eye out for anything out of the ordinary. Their spy was good and was trained to fool even Konoha's A and BU, but even so, he was not prepared for someone with Kakashi's experience. Especially if they had to stay in a close proximity with him all the way back to the village. There's more, I don't know if you noticed, but they had the Hyuga and Uchiha heirs with them too. What? Takara gasped, screw this infiltration mission. Let's just abduct them now. The heirs of the two most powerful dojutsu lines are worth way more than protecting the spy. The Jounin closed his eyes as he thought. He really wanted to consider it. The opportunity to nab two valuable heirs to Konoha was almost too good to pass up. However, the more he thought about it, the less enchanted he became with the idea. If they were to attempt to abduct the two, he was certain a confrontation with Hatake would be unavoidable. If they managed to get away, Konoha would surely start asking questions as to why they were in their borders to begin with, which would put their spy at risk. And this was assuming they managed to get away. Right now, they were in the heart of Fire Country. It would take them days of travel to reach the border. It was already going to be challenging to leave undetected as originally planned. They would be even slower with the added weight, making it easy for Hunter Neem to catch up. Plus the border patrol. As good of an opportunity as it was, there were too many factors for them to fail. As much as I hate to say it, we are going to have to pass on this opportunity. We would likely fail in our endeavor and potentially put our spy at risk. Takara was about to object, but was silenced when Daiki raised his hand. Non-negotiable. Now, let's move on to see what we can do to make sure this mission is still a success. First, we need to push back in case that Hyuga activates her Byakugan. Next, their Jounin is going to be on the lookout for anything suspicious now. We have to find a way to draw his attention away from our informant. Here is what we are going to do. We're finally here, the blonde shouted as the complex came into view. The complex was mostly barren with a few clusters of buildings off to one side. On the opposite side of the complex was the actual lumberyard. The ground was covered in dirt and pine dust from the acres of trees that were torn down. Hinata and Sasuke also let out a sigh of relief as their eyes wandered the new environment. Kakashi's attention may have seemed glued to his book, but he was instead scanning the tree line around the complex. He was sure he had seen something earlier, and it was making him uneasy. Any friendly Hunter Neem or patrolling officer would have at least clarified his identity through hand signals. The whole situation made him uncomfortable, and he had long ago learned to listen to his gut. Change of plans, guys, he said as he turned their attention back to him. Hinata, Sasuke, I know I told you to look around, but I've changed my mind. We are all going to go meet with the manager, before we hit the hay. You guys deserve a break for not complaining through the whole trip. Hinata seemed grateful, and Sasuke seemed like he didn't care. Naruto was jumping up and down with excitement as they headed towards the administrative building. There was no need to worry them until he was sure it was something. It could just as easily been an animal that caught his attention, but he wanted to ensure it was nothing. To say that Naruto's performance for the manager had gone well would be an understatement. He had been captivated by the boy's demonstration, and Kakashi could see the glimmer in his eye as the new possibilities this presented swam through his head. He had instantly agreed to the boy's proposition and was very interested to learn more about the sealing techniques. Unfortunately for him, Kakashi decided to end their conversation as he noticed his other two charges growing drowsy. The blonde and the manager had been talking for over an hour, and he decided to cut their conversation short. They decided to set camp next to the storage facility for the lumber. After another hour, the three genin were sound asleep as Kakashi slowly exited his tent. He created a Kage Bunshin to stay with the group, before heading outside of their circle of tents. He paused to make sure Naruto's proximity seals were in still place before he dashed off towards the road. At his current speed, it took him little time to return to the spot they had passed earlier. When he arrived, he bit his thumb and made 4 hand signs before slamming his hand into the ground. After a cloud of smoke dissipated, a tiny brown pug sat in front of him. Kakashi, I thought you and your little squirts were out on an easy mission close to the village? The dog said in a gruff voice. We still are on our mission. However, how easy it will remain will be decided if you find anything in the next few minutes, Kakashi replied seriously. Pakken nodded his head and followed the man into the trees. He came to a stop a short distance away from the road and noticed a bush with heavily bent twigs. He knelt down and studied it as he waved Pakken over. See if you can get a scent off of this. The dog began sniffing at the bush, before turning to the man and said, "Don't notice anything out of the ordinary." Kakashi nodded. "Go look around the area, and report back if you find anything." As the dog walked away with his nose in the dirt, Kakashi scanned his eyes around the area. He was sure he had seen something right here. Even if it had been just an animal, there should have been a scent left over. While some might have said he was being paranoid, the ANBU in him just wouldn't let it slide. "Kakashi, up here," Pakken called. Kakashi jumped up to a branch not far away and landed next to Pakken. "Find anything?" "No, but that is exactly what the problem is." He pointed his nose to where the branch connected with the tree. "Right here. I smell nothing. I mean, no smell from the bark or leaves. Nothing. I think we both know what that means." He did know what this meant. Many Hunternines and ANBU agents used a particular musk to hide their scent during high-profile stealth missions. It was as close to perfect as you were going to get. It completely masked the scent of whoever applied it, allowing the user to even trick the noses of the famed Inuzuka. However, it did have one flaw. It worked a little too well. The musk was so heavy that it tended to linger for hours at a time. While some might have argued this was a good thing, it created its own problem. If a person lingered long enough, the musk would spread out and encompass the area around them. This left its own kind of trail, for it left behind a vacuum of air devoid of any scent. Kakashi frowned. Something was very wrong. Whoever had been here did not want their presence known. "Thanks, Pakken. I may need to call you again in the next day or two, so be ready on standby. When you return, ask the Hokage if he has any patrols going through this sector." "No problem," the dog nodded before asking, "And just when are you going to introduce us to your new students? Bull is very excited to meet them." In spite of the situation, Kakashi chuckled. "I'll make sure to have them meet you all very soon. You guys may not like Sasuke, but I'm certain you're going to love Hinata. She'll probably spoil you rotten." Pakken waved his tail at the idea before disappearing in a cloud of smoke. Kakashi stood up and gazed around the forest. It was much too quiet for his liking. Someone was in the area that did not want to be found. Kakashi lifted off as he began searching for more clues. After 4 hours of searching to no avail, he finally quit and returned to camp. His arrival had caused an uproar from the blonde, who drearily charged out of his tent after being woken up by his proximity seals. The Jounin just waved him off by saying he had to go to the bathroom, causing the blonde and his two teammates to angrily stare at him as they returned to their tents. As all three went back to sleep, Kakashi summoned more clones to keep watch. Let them get their sleep. Tomorrow, they would need their energy. They were all going to be busy tomorrow. Chapter 11, Trial by Fire, Part 1. It never stopped amazing him how much Naruto could accomplish when he put his mind to it. Kakashi stood next to his other two charges as they watched the horde of Naruto's clones work. It was like staring into a sea of blonde hair and navy sleeves as they ran around the construction yard. They weren't the only ones enjoying the show. Workers who hadn't sustained major injuries were off in the shade laughing at the whole debacle. The clones had a pretty efficient plan set out. Multiple groups carried the enormous blocks of wood out from the storage house into the courtyard and organized them into blocks of 4 planks up and 5 across. The original was sitting at a table next to the piles as he worked on the necessary storage seals. To ensure that nothing happened to the storage scrolls, he was making sure to add special seals to prevent water and fire damage, just in case. When he completed a scroll, he would hand it off to a clone who'd walk over to the piles of lumber. With a few hand signs, the pile would disappear in a cloud of smoke as a new kanji appeared on the paper. He would take the scroll and carefully place it in a small metal box off to the side. The manager hovered over the original the entire time, entranced by the boy's actions. He was vigorously jotting things down on his own notepad and would occasionally interrupt the boy to ask a few questions, which he was delighted to answer. After a while, Kakashi waved over the manager. The bespectacled man jogged over with a big grin plastered on his face. "Are you sure I can't convince you to let me take him off your hands? He's a godsend. He's turning a 4 to 5 day job into something we'll have done by tonight. I was skeptical when Hiruzen said he had the perfect genin for the job, but this is spectacular." Kakashi could see the blonde blushing over the man's shoulder. He was rubbing the back of his head and couldn't stop a sincere smile from erupting on his face. He wasn't used to hearing such praise directed at him. I'm sorry, Kenta-san, but I'm afraid I'm going to decline on that. I'm sure it would alleviate some headaches in the village, but I just simply can't part with my precious student. Who is going to annoy Sasuke if he's absent? Sasuke shot the Jounin a glare as the blonde boy giggled. Even Hinata seemed to smile, though she tried to fight it. Sasuke shot her a hurt glare, and she couldn't suppress her giggle that time. Anyways, I wanted to give you the heads up that I'm taking these two to do some patrols around the area. Since this is still a mission, I thought I'd take the time to practice some patrols. The manager nodded as Naruto yelled, "Hey, what about me? You seem to have your hands full. Or are you saying you'd rather be patrolling than showing off your Fuinjutsu?" The blonde couldn't argue with that, so instead he made a little pout before getting back to work. Have fun, Hinata-chan. I guess you too, Sasuke team. The old man chuckled as the group in front of him turned and set off into the woods around the compound. He turned back around and said, "You really don't like to get along with him, do you?" The blonde shot up from his work. "Never. He's nothing but a major prick, who everyone loves to fawn over. Oh, look at me. I'm all dark and brooding. I'm so mature and impressive," the blonde taunted before letting out his own mature raspberry. The old man nodded as he sat next to him at the table. With good cause. As a civilian who stays out of the affairs of shinobi, even I know how impressive the Uchiha clan was. If they were really so great, why aren't they still around? The blonde stopped and felt a little ashamed as he realized how rude that had sounded. The manager looked amazed. Even he knew what happened. You really don't know? He asked, shocked. The blonde shook his head. All I know is that they were taken down by one guy. No one in the village liked to talk about it. At school, Iruka-sensei didn't want us to bother Sasuke about it. Not that the blonde didn't want to talk to him about it. Even though he and Sasuke had never been on the best terms, he had felt his heart stop when he had heard Sasuke had lost his family. He had become just like him. Alone. He had wanted to reach out, but their prides never let them do it. Instead, they formed an unspoken connection that neither would admit existed, even today. The old manager shook his head. That isn't a story for me to tell. That story is better coming from your sensei or Sasuke-san himself. He paused, as the blonde boy seemed to contemplate things. Now. Let's move on from such depressing matters. I do believe you were telling me something about these insurance seals, as you call them. The blonde boy appreciated the gesture and began rattling off his ideas about seals. At the same time, his mind still lingered on the same question. How much did he really know about Sasuke? Shortly after Kakashi and the others had left, he stopped and turned to face them. Is there something wrong, sensei? Hinata asked. Yes, I didn't want to alarm Kenta-san, but we have a potential problem. Sasuke's back straightened as he gave Kakashi his undivided attention. Yesterday, as we were walking towards the complex, I thought I saw something in the woods. It wasn't until last night, when I went back to check, that I confirmed that there was someone there. So that's what he was doing last night, Sasuke thought. Someone tried very hard to cover their trail, which leads me to assume that we may be facing some trouble in the next day or two. Why didn't you inform the idiot about this? Sasuke asked, surprising Hinata, who had been thinking the same thing. He has his hands full as it is. Besides, he needs his full concentration on focusing on those seals. There can be some nasty problems if he makes a mistake. So, Hinata, I'm going to require the aid from your Byakugan as we search through the woods. Sasuke seemed a little agitated and asked, then why not leave me with the dobe? What if the assailant decides to go after him? Is that concern for your other teammate? I'm so glad my lessons are starting to take root, Kakashi joked with a nice smile. Earning a glare from the brunette, he continued, Naruto can just flash away if anything serious happens. Besides, I thought you said you wanted a little action? While this answer seemed to appease him, it wasn't exactly the whole truth. To be honest, it would be trouble enough for any jounin to have to watch one heir, but Kakashi had to watch too. Adding the son of his late sensei into the mix, Kakashi was responsible for 3 of the most important figures of their age group in Konoha. By keeping them both close to him, he could have Hinata help with his search, and the two would be able to support each other if anything went wrong. It was a win-win. You still won't answer me about that technique, Sasuke said, cutting him out of his train of thought. And you still won't ask him yourself, Kakashi replied. Like I've told you, it's a technique he has been working on for a long time, and I'm sure he'd be delighted to talk about it with someone. Although, I will admit he'd likely brag about it for a while before you could actually get anything useful from him. He finished with a sweat drop before his serious composure returned to his face. If there aren't any other questions, then let's move out. Yoshio had been amazed as he watched the Konoha genin get to work. This was just ridiculous. No genin, or even jounin for that matter, should have enough chakra to pump out that many clones. Iwasmo was leaning against the shed with the other workers as they watched the boy put them to shame. He had been watching the team since they arrived, and he too had been shocked to see the arrival of Kakashi Hatake. This was going to present a problem. He had noticed the man looking suspicious when he arrived at the complex, and Yoshio had seen him dart out of the gate during the night. He had sent a message to Daiki immediately, asking if he had been uncovered. He was instantly on guard when he received the message. While they hadn't been discovered, Hatake knew something was wrong. They were now making a plan to lure the man's attention away from the development. As he stared at the Konoha jounin in question, he racked his brain for something that would help his protection unit. As he gazed at the boy, who was becoming unsettlingly familiar to him, he spied the metal case full of the boy's scrolls. He suppressed a grin as he watched Kakashi and his other genin head into the woods. He called to his so-called colleagues and headed off towards the outhouses. When he was sure he was out of sight, he bit his finger and slammed his hand to the ground. A cloud of smoke appeared before revealing a small gopher sitting on its hind legs. "What up, boss? Another message for Daiki?" He nodded and relayed his message. The IWA unit sat in their cave hidden a few feet underground. It was easy enough for any IWA nin to perform. 2 Doton Jutsu to clear out the space and make holes for air, and bam, you had yourself a small base hidden away from the eyes of the enemy. As they sat there, Daiki's eyes shot open when he heard scratching against the walls and one of Yoshio's gopher summons poked its head through the wall. It was startled when Metal Spike landed next to its head and it wailed, "It's me, you idiots! Hold your fire!" Kyo held Takara's arm to ensure that the brown-haired Chunin would shoot anything else at the poor creature. Daiki crouched before the gopher and asked, "What news does Yoshio have?" "You're going to have to push up your timetable," it said as it brushed off its tiny maroon shirt. "That kid from Konoha is really something else. Apparently they are going to be done by later tonight with the pace he is setting." "That's impossible. What is the uchiha doing that could make the process of loading the carriages go by that quickly?" "It's not the uchiha kid, it's some blonde kid doing some quirky things with seals." Takara's head shot up and his eyes narrowed at this comment. "He's using Kage Bunshin to speed up the process, as well as putting all the lumber into storage seals." Daiki was impressed. For a mere genin to have enough chakra to summon that many Kage Bunshin was astounding. What also surprised him was that apparently the boy was knowledgeably in Fuin Jutsu. No wonder the kid was paired up with such important teammates. As he continued his conversation with the summons, Takara and Kyo were having their own conversation. "Don't you think about it," Kyo whispered. "Think about what?" Takara glared. "Drop the bullshit, Takara. We've known each other for a long time, and I know that look. Just because the kid has blonde hair and knows Fuin Jutsu does not mean he's related to him. You've got to let this search thing go." "I will not," he angrily whispered back. "You know what the yellow flash did to my family. He somehow saw through our techniques and spread the information along to his allies. If it wasn't for him..." "It was war," Q interjected. "You can't stay mad at an enemy for defending his homeland. Don't forget, we were the ones that started the last war." "Are you saying all those deaths are our fault?" Takara glared as he rounded on him. "You know I'm not. Stop making excuses for a fight. Now promise me you won't just take this opportunity as an excuse to vent and jeopardize the mission to attack this kid." Takara glared but didn't say anything. A puff of smoke caught their attention as Daiki turned back to them. "Alright, change of plans? Listen up. This is going to make our old plan much more believable. In case you didn't know, this lumberyard is part of a major business chain for the Land of Fire that is led by the Daimyo himself. They supply lumber and paper all across the elemental nations. So, Q, you were going to stage an incident to make it look like we were stealing records of the company. You're still going to do this, but there is a small metal box, which contains all of the sealed up lumber for the order that you're going to have to find. You're going to make sure you are caught stealing it. Q nodded as the Jounin went on. The rest of the plan remains the same. Takara, you will wait at the specified point and cover Q if things go south. He shouldn't have a problem with a genin or two, but it never hurts to be prepared. In the meantime, I will distract their Jounin and lead him away from you. At some point, make it seem like they have recovered the box and head to the extraction point. I'll meet up with you there, and we will proceed to head out of Fire Country. This would draw the attention away from the possibility of a spy and give Konoha a different problem to address. It would seem as if they were hired to steal records for a rival company instead of their actual objective. Our mission is a go tonight. Sasuke had been a little disappointed when their search resulted in nothing. Even with the aid of Hinata's Byakugan, they were unable to turn up anything. After 8 o'clock, they headed back to the complex in defeat. As they neared the lumberyard, they heard loud chanting which only increased in volume the closer they got. When they saw the horde of Naruto's clones huddled around their work area, and they weren't alone. The injured workers and other employees who had been out in the woods cutting down new trees all day were shouting encouragement to the final group. The copies of Naruto seemed exhausted as they carried the final block onto the pile. The original beamed as he shook the hands of his clones. They let out a weary sigh as they meandered off and sat off on the sideline with the rest. Naruto brought out the last scroll and sealed the pile away and dropped it in the box. "Yada! We are done!" he shouted, which was met with a roar of applause from the workers. "Great job, you guys. Couldn't do it without you," Naruto beamed at his army of clones. They all broke out in their trademark smile, as Sasuke cut in, "Talking to yourself now, Dobe? I'd be a little concerned." A chorus of "Shut the hell up!" was his response as they all whipped their heads around to stare at him. He had to admit it was a little unnerving. Naruto started to form the release hand sign when a thought crept into Kakashi's head. "Wait a minute, Naruto." "Release!" the blonde shouted. All the clones disappeared in a giant puff of smoke, earning a couple surprised shouts from the crowd. When the dust finally cleared, the blonde boy was lying sprawled out on his back unconscious. "I was afraid of that," Kakashi thought as the workers and Hinata rushed up to him. "What just happened?" Sasuke asked. "That, Sasuke, is one of the reasons why I forbade Naruto from teaching you that jutsu. You see, Kage Bunshin are very useful due to all of their experiences and memories being sent back to the user. As you can see, this includes all of their physical exhaustion as well. His mind was just bombarded by the exhaustion from all of these clones. He should have released them in groups instead of all at once. Remind me to warn him to never do that again." "Is he going to be alright?" Kenta asked with genuine concern. "He'll be fine. He recovers faster than anyone I've ever seen. Although he is going to be exhausted for the next day or two." "That's such a shame, and to think, I just had the chefs whip up a special meal for him. When he wasn't talking about seals, all he would talk about was ramen." "Ramen!" The boy sprang up, surprising everyone as he stared at the manager. "You really did that for MOH, oh. I don't feel so good." He collapsed on his hands and knees as Hinata rushed to his side. Kakashi shook his head. The boy really had a one-track mind. "Are you okay, Naruto?" Kakashi asked, kneeling down next to the boy. He panted heavily as he tried to give the man a smile. "You know me, Kakashi-sensei. I can bounce back from anything. Give me a soldier pill and I'll be just fine." "No need for that. All that will do is make it harder for you to fall asleep later. After you've eaten, I want you to hit the hay immediately. Is that understood?" "You won't get any complaints from me, sensei. Let's go, Hinata-chan," he wearily exclaimed as she helped him make his way to the mess tent. The workers chuckled as they started heading out to their own temporary accommodations. Kakashi eyed his remaining student. "Not joining them?" "I'll pass. I'd rather spend my time looking into our little problem." Kakashi nodded. He was just as frustrated as his students when their results turned up nothing. At least it had been an instructional day for the two of them. He had gone over several of his own tracking techniques as they searched through the forest. Alright, do some rounds around the facility, and ask some of the workers if they have seen anything strange lately. What about you? I'm going to be doing the same thing, but much more discreetly. Meet me back here in an hour and we'll compare notes. With that, he disappeared in a swirl of leaves. Sasuke put his hands in his pockets and headed off towards the workers' new accommodations. From the tree line, a pair of eyes stared down as these events played out. 1 down, 3 to go. It was a little disturbing to see Naruto eat that slowly. Usually, the blonde gulped down his meals without a second thought as fast as he could. Now, the boy was taking his time as he fought to stay awake. He was never someone to turn down free ramen, especially when it was a reward for all of his hard work. Hinata sat with him offering words of encouragement as he fought against the sweet lull of slumber. The chefs were laughing the entire time, especially when the blonde nearly face planted into the bowl. After an hour of pure willpower, the blonde finally finished his meal and thanked the chefs. With some help from Hinata, the pair made their way back towards their campsite. Thank you, Hinata, the blonde panted as they passed by the administrative building, for helping me get through all that. I promise to make it up to you. Why, you don't have to do anything, Naruto-kun. I am always happy to help. Come on, Hinata-chan. You're too sweet all the time. You're going to start making me feel bad. There has to be something I can help you with. After everything you've done for me over the past few weeks, it's the least I can do. Hinata was about to refute him, when something popped into her mind. She had been looking for help on a certain subject. Maybe it was time to share it with her team. Actually, she was cut when she had a loud voice shout, "What do you think you're doing in my office?" The glass window on the floor above them shattered, raining glass on the duo below as a figure darted out and raced towards the main gate. After him, Kenta pleaded as he poked his head out of the broken window. That man just took off with the box full of the sealed lumber. Hinata's eyes whipped towards the man who held a bunch of paper in one hand and the black box in the other. While she didn't see the headband, there was no mistaking that red and brown uniform. IWA. She desperately looked between the exhausted boy in her arms and the retreating form of the man. She couldn't just leave him. What if there were other IWA shinobi in the area? Go on, Hinata-chan. Go kick his ass, the blonde encouraged with a smile. I'll watch after the boy. Go after that hooligan and show him what happens when you mess with the land of fire. She smiled and set Blonde down as gently as she could before racing after the figure. She had found their elusive intruder. She wasn't the only one. At the same time, Kakashi had been amiably speaking with one of the workers when something caught his eye behind the man's head. A tall, dark figure dashed into the woods with a limp object on his back. Kakashi felt his heart rate pick up when he saw what was on the back of the limp object's shirt, a red and white fan symbol. Pushing past the man mid-sentence, the Jounin raced after the disappearing silhouette as it disappeared deeper into the forest. He had already failed one uchiha in his lifetime. He was not going to fail another. Hinata and her target dashed between the trees as they raced further and further away from the complex. She reached into her pouch and flung a kunai at the intruder, who ducked his head at the last second. A second later the kunai exploded, sending the perpetrator flying back towards her. Veins bulged around her eyes, as she prepared to intercept the enemy shinobi midair. She reached out for a strike, only for target to twist midair and kick off her back onto another tree branch. She grabbed a tree branch as she fell and spun back around to face her opponent. He was a young man in his early 20s with a calm disposition on his face. With her Byakugan, she noted the singed paper and black box he had been carrying on the forest floor behind. She dropped down from the tree and took up a defensive stance in front of the objects. What are you doing in the land of fire? The man failed to comment as he dropped to the ground, weaving hand signs. Doton, core entrapment, he shouted as he slammed his hands to the ground. With her Byakugan, Hinata could see his chakra racing and melding into the ground almost in slow motion. She leaped into the air as the earth contorted into spikes which shot forward to impale her. Twisting midair, she noticed a man racing through more hand signs. Katon Ember Barrage! He shouted as multiple fireballs sprang from his fingertips. She stared helplessly as the fire raced towards her. The fire engulfed its target, and it fell to the floor below in a smoldering heap. Damn, Q thought as he landed and stared at the heap of fire. I had expected more from the Hyuga girl. He stared at the burning object and recognized it as a block of wood just in time to dodge the chakra-infused strike coming from behind. The two danced across the trees as he desperately tried to avoid being touched by her hands. Although he was a Chunin, the girl had caught him off guard. He tried to regain his bearings and start pressing back against the girl, but she wouldn't give him the chance. She was lashing out with her palms in sharp, controlled movements, and it was all he could do, simply block the strikes. He continued to backpedal until his back hit the base of a tree and the girl was quickly upon him. Having no choice, he reached out and caught her hands with his own. He felt the sharp pain creep into his hands as he held her at arm's length. The two struggled for dominance. Q did have age and size on the girl, but it was hard to push back as she kept pumping her chakra into his hands. It was all he could do to hold her at bay, due to the agonizing pain. With his longer reach, he kicked her in the stomach and shoved her away. Finally, having a moment to breathe, he massaged his hands, which felt as if they were cramping up on him. The girl took a moment to catch her breath after the kick, and returned her glare to the IWA Chunin. You can no longer mold jutsu in your hands. Please consider surrendering. He chuckled. At least the girl had some modest manners. No can do, Lady Hyuga. It would be rather shameful for a Chunin just to surrender because of that. While not normally terrifying, the veins around her eyes certainly added to her intimidation factor. You cannot best a Hyuga in hand-to-hand combat, she droned just as her father had drilled into her head for years. I do not wish to cause you more harm than necessary. Well, would you look at that? A Hyuga with a heart. This actually was a good opportunity for him. It gave him a good excuse to hightail it out of here. His mission was a success. The manager and her teammate had both seen him ransacking the office, and now she could easily reclaim the goods. He opened his mouth to reply, when his eyes widened by the sight behind her. She noticed his expression and was surprised when something appeared just out of the blind spot of her Byakugan. She twisted out of the way as a sharp pain lit up across her left arm. She fell to the ground as another figure appeared before her. You aren't going anywhere, Konoha scum! Takara, what the hell are you doing? He had been given the perfect opportunity to tap out and head to the extraction point. What was Takara thinking? Screw the mission. I need answers. You! Hyuga! He yelled as he pointed a slender finger at her. Hinata ripped her sleeve off as she tried to bandage the cut that raced down her arm. She was shocked when she looked at her attacker and found a slender needle-like metal appendage pointing right at her. What in the world was he? Tell me everything you know about your blonde bastard of a teammate. What on earth did Naruto have to do with this? His other arm shifted and she was horrified to see his hand take on a metallic sheen before morphing into a massive ball. You're going to tell me, or I'm going to make it excruciating for you. Spike sprung from the sphere as if to accent his point. So start talking. The young girl pushed herself up and ignored the lash on her arm as she stared at the slender man standing before her. Hinata was not typically a brave person. She was honestly a very meek person, who shied away from conflict. She was also starting to feel inadequate being on the same team as Sasuke and Naruto. Each of them was a prodigy in their own right, while she felt like the third wheel on the path forward. But at this moment, neither of them was here. It was just her against a crazed metallic maniac who wanted to harm the ones she loved. Go on, Hinata-chan. Go kick his ass. The look he had given her was one of absolute confidence. He was certain she could do this, and she would not let him down. It wasn't just him. The Hokage believed in her enough to place her on the same team as legends. It was time she started earning that position. Steeling her resolve, she settled into her Juken stance and stared the crazed man right in his eyes. I dare you to try and make me. Thanks for watching, Shinobi Squad. If you enjoyed this what if, hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so you never miss the next twist. Drop your theories in the comments, I'm always reading. Want more Naruto heat? Check out the other videos on the channel. Stay sharp, stay awesome, and remember even shadow clones need love. Peace out, Shinobi,